Okay, good morning and welcome to Just Daf It, Daf Yomi Shir. We're learning Yevamos Kuf Yud Beis 112 today. Um, I had the honor of learning 111 blot. This will be the 111th blot Daf in Masach Yevamos. Pretty big thing. Every day is a big shir, especially today. We have a big chiddush for you at the end of the blot, end of the Daf, about how long a person who's in a relationship with a woman can last. According to Chazal, how long a person in a relationship with a woman can last without being together with that woman. I'm going to extend that chiddush even where there wasn't yichud over here. I'm going to turn even Tosos on its head, seemingly. Maybe other Rishonim say like I do, but it's going to be a big chiddush. Today we'll be finishing the 13th parak. We'll be starting the 14th parak. There are 16 prakim, I believe, but only another 10 blot, so we're almost there at the end. Today we'll be discussing in the beginning of the next parak about marriage of deaf people and shotim. Do they have validity midrabanan? Not at all. We're going to start today at the bottom of Kuf Yud Aleph Murbeis. So the Gemara says, this is quoting from a Mishnah we had really on the top of the daf over here. A couple lines up. Right? If she claimed within the first 30 days after the brother dies that they didn't have bia, so she's believed, and therefore we force him to do chalitza, we compel him to do chalitza, because we could assume that a man could not have bia right away. So, I have the question: why do we believe the woman over the man? The man claims that she claims there was no bia, right? So she wants a chalitza. Why do we believe why do we just give in to her desire? So the Gemara says, Man Tana, we have to answer that question. Man Tana, according to the Mishnah, it's evident that until 30 days, because the Mishnah says if it's after 30 days, she makes her complaint, right? So then we assume that the husband really was bo'al her. He was bo'al her because he can't hold 30 days without being bo'al her, and therefore chalitza, we have a suffix, maybe there wasn't a bia, so therefore we request a chalitza. We don't just say give a get, because if really was true that we're 100% sure the man was bo'al her, so then that would be yibum, and she would need a get to get out of that, not chalitza. So we have to analyze that to what percentages do we believe these statements or not. Amar Rav Yochanan or Meiri, who's the Tana of our Mishnah? Meiri, the Sanya, or Bryce, the Tana of Psulim Kol Shoshim Derived Meir. The Tana of Psulim is all 30 days Derived Meir, meaning this is Maseches Ksuvos, right? A man, he marries a woman and he claims that she's not a virgin, right? She's not a virgin. He signed up for a psula, wrote a psula, again, Masayim Zuz, we'll get them Maseches Ksuvos. He finds out she's not a virgin. Pesach Asuach Matzasi. He finds there's no hymen, there's no psulim. She didn't make blood when they were together. So he has the ability to say that 30 days. For Meir, Yossi Omer Nisra Alter, Lenisra Aflachar Kamashanim. Yossi says differently. He says if there was Nisra, we have proof they were miyached with each other. So then right away, the first time that a court convenes, a basin convenes, he has to immediately bring his taina. Otherwise, he loses the validity of his claim. Lo nistra aflach kamashanim, but they have many years. For many years, they can go without bia if they weren't nistra. Now, what does Reb Meir holds about nistra versus lo nistra? Was Reb Meir saying his case 30 days in all cases, whether it's nistra or not nistra? If it's nistra, 30 days, and if it's not nistra, it doesn't matter 30 days. Or was he saying there's three possibilities? Or he was arguing, and he was arguing on Nistara, right? The Rio says Nistara out there, and Rabbi Meir says Nistara, even if they're Nistara 30 days. Or like I want to suggest, and even Ben Sinam suggests a third possibility, which Tosos doesn't take into account, is that really Rabbi Meir agrees with Rabbi Yossi and Nistara, right? Ein apotropos la'raya. So there's yichud, we assume there's a bia. Ein yichud, ein bia, we assume there's a bia going on. Lo Nistara aflach gamashamim. How long can you go if they weren't secluded? A man and a woman are in a relationship. Here it's a Yevama with a Yavam, or an Arus and a Rasal, so the Gemara discusses. They're in a relationship. How long can you go without being bo'al each other? Rabbi Meir says they can't go more than 30 days. Rabbi says many years they can go. Rabbi Marafilo Tamer Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi says even Rabbi Yossi, Akal Kam Rabbi Yossi Hashem Elab Rusasa the Gizba. Rabbi Yossi only said it over there. By his Arusa. That's what the Tainis Pasulim is talking about, because they were engaged before they were in Arusa. He's familiar with her. They have a good relationship, a cordial relationship. So it's understandable that they're together right away. About Eishes Achiv, but right, the Yevama, it's not his wife, it's his brother's wife. Maybe this buzzes me now. He's embarrassed of her. Men are embarrassed of a woman. He's not going to make a move on the woman, and therefore we don't assume that they're a bowl right away. They could even wait, according to Rabbi Yossi, 30 days. Why does the mission say there's kfiyah, right? She makes the time within 30 days there was no biyah. So we force him to do chalitza. Force him to do yibum. The mitzvah is yibum. Yibum is the preferable mitzvah over chalitza. Amar Rav, we're talking about a case where she has a get, right? Once she has a get, so now there's two types of get. There's a get, right, when you're in a structure of yibum and you give a get, that apostles a yibum, doesn't free her, she needs a chalitza after that. And then there's a get where if they became married through yibum, then the get is like a regular get to sever their marital bond. So she has a get. We're not sure what this get is. Macy based. So let's have a question from Bryce. Yevamos Amra b'soch shloshim yom lo nivalti. Like the case of our Mishnah. She said, I wasn't bold. We don't care what he says, whether he says there was beer or not. We forced him to dig her a chalitza. We believe her that she wasn't nivalti. Even if the husband says I was boel her, and therefore I should, if I want to release her, I have to give her a get and not a chalitza. We just believe the woman. We believe the woman. And we force to do a chalitza. If she makes his time after 30 days, after the brother's death. We request, we don't force, we request to give her a chalitza. He omeres nivalti. After 30 days, she says, I was nivelis. So who omer lo baalti? Now she's saying the opposite. She's saying that was bia. And he says, no, there was no bia. Hareza yotzi beget. He has to give her a get, because we assume after 30 days they were boel each other, and therefore a yibum for sure happened. Therefore you have to give her a get. Who omer baalti? Who omer es lo nivalti? Right after 30 days, he says I was boler, and she says I wasn't nivelis. Alpi shachazar va'amar lo baalti. Even though he went back, he changed his mind and he said I wasn't boel. Sarach get v'chalitza. You need a get and a chalitza because, right, we're not sure. You know, chalitza maybe there wasn't a bia, and a get because maybe there was a yibum. Amar rep. So the question from this brayse is as follows: that in the first case, right, within 30 days, right. So we say kofin o, right? And now we're not talking about, the Sefer talks about where there's a get. In this narration, we're not talking about where there's a get. So there's no get over here. So then why don't we, from this brayse, you see from the brayse, still we only force chalitza. We could still force yibum. Why don't you force yibum over there? So the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Ami sricha chalitza im gita. Basically what the brayse meant to say is that she had a get over here, like Rav said. She had a get, and you need chalitza with the get also, like exactly Rav said. Amar Rabbi Ami sricha chalitza im gita. Rav Ashi Amar Hasam get lezikaso get lebiyaso. Rav Ashi has a different way of resolving this difficulty from the brayse. He says there is talking about get lezikaso hachal get lebiyaso. This brayse is talking about where the get we're talking about is a get where assume yibum happened and the get is to sever the marital bond. The Mishnah Rav says talking about the get is recognizable as a get from a zika, a get of a yivmin, which is probably written differently. You give a get to the Yevama as opposed to a get to your wife, and that's why you don't force them to do yibum over there, because there's a get that pasoled yibum over here, and once you have the get that pasoled the yibum, you can only do chalitza. Hanu shnayim modim the asul l'kmei the rava. There were two people, the man and the woman, the yavam and the yavam, or moda the asul l'kmei the rava. Amul rava chalutz lo v'shar lo tigra. Right. So what did they admit over here? They both admitted that they never had bia. They agree they never had bia. So the Gemara says. Chalotz lo v'shar lo tigra. He never had bia, so he did chalitza. We said if it's after 30 days, right? We assume bia happened. You need a get and a chalitza. A chalitza is not enough because we assume a bia happened. You get to sever the marital bond. Amrlei itanya tanya. He said, if there's a brisa like that, so then we have to follow the brisa. She needs again a chalitza. Hon brei the Rav Nachman the Rav Nachman. Hon the son of Rav Nachman asked his father, Sarasamahu. What about the situation, right, where there wasn't yet a bia? We don't know if there was a bia. What about the tzara? The tzara, right? She becomes the co-wife. She wasn't. She wasn't making any claims over here. 2 wives fell for you. The brother had 2 wives, so the Sarah would not. No one's making any claims about the Sarah. She's not making any claims. The husband's not making claims about her, right? Do we pater her? Can we assume that Yibam happened after 30 days that the bia happened, and once the bia happens to one of them, the Sarah's pater. She doesn't need chalitza. Amrlei v'chi b'pnei shanu kofin umavakshin to aser Sarah, because even though when it comes to the first Yevamos, she's making tainas, there was no bia over there. And before 3 days we're kofim and after 3 days mavakshin, we're going to ask the Sarah. No, we assume in general, even before 30 days, even though until 30 days a man for sure is not going to go without bia, but we assume in regular cases of yibam they're going to have bia right away. So therefore, if we have no reason to assume not, so for the Sarah, we'll say that they for sure had the bia and they'd yibam to one of them, and the Sarah is pater and a chalitza and a yibam. Hanoderes Hana, she can marry anybody. Hanoderes Hana, this is the Mishnah says she takes a neder of Hana. In the beginning of Mesechus Nadar, at the end of Mesechus Nadar, the very end of Mesechus Nadar, they said 3 women, they make a taina, and they can, based on their taina, they can leave their marriage and get the ksuva. This the Gemara says in the Dharam, it's talking about Aisha's Kohen, right? She was raped by a man. She didn't do it. When she was raped, it wasn't her fault. And the fact that he's a Kohen, right, causes her to be usher to him, so it's not her fault. Hashemayim, so she gets her ksuva. Hashemayim benila beinech. This the Gemara in the Dharam says, where she's basically saying that she can feel that when he ejaculates in her, it's not like an arrow, it doesn't shoot her like an arrow, in which case it's impossible to impregnate her, the Gemara says in Mesechus Nida. So therefore, and only a woman could feel it, the Gemara says. We learn Mesechus Yevamos on Daf Samachay, it says the same thing. Only a woman can know this for sure, so therefore, she can go out and it's his fault. Not Tula Anim Yehudim. If she says, she makes a neder, and she says, I don't want to have bia with anybody. She says, I don't want with the husband, that's her fault. She doesn't want to have bia with anybody. It shows that she obviously has physical pain through bia, and therefore it's an onus for her, and therefore she's allowed to get out of the marriage and get her ksuva. Chazru Lomar, after a bunch of women did this and they saw they were tricking them, she would say these common things even though they weren't true in order that she should get out of her wife. She wanted another husband. She had her eyes on somebody else. She wanted to get her ksuva. She says, I was raped by a man, and she's an Aisha's Kohen. She has to bring proof that she was raped. If there's a problem with Yoruk Eches, Derech Bakasha, they should ask the man. They don't have to believe the man, but they should ask the man, maybe you should get out of the marriage because there's a possibility she's right and you can't have children. If she says we suspect that she's not telling the truth, and the husband is mayfair his chelek, right? So he's not asr b'hana to be together with him, and they have to be together. And she's asr to everybody else. Her neder is kept for everybody else. It's pretty bad for her. If she says this third case, she says I'm asr to all the Jews. The Yavam Mahu, she didn't include the Yavam in her statement, in her Isser, in her Neder. Maybe she didn't even think that her husband, right? She said all men in general, but she didn't mean the Yavam because she meant people that the Yavam was usher to her at that point, because Eishes Ach, right? So she only meant men that were permissible to her in general, but this man's usher, so she never had in mind. She doesn't have in mind that her husband's going to die, and Afla Kama Yavam, she's going to be terrorist to the Yavam. Although Rav Amar Yavam ain't no kabal, he says the Yavam not like the Baal. She's muteris to the Yavam, the neder is not chal on the Yavam. The Shmuel or Yavam are raised that kabal. Shmuel says that Yavam is like the Baal. Amar Rabbi Gavas says Rav Sabra. It makes more sense like Rav. The stand on the neder is hanam Yavam b'chay Baal akoven ososhiachlos. Mishnah says she takes a neder from the Yavama in the life of her husband. So we're forced him to do chalitza. This is the maska daita. And if really we assume the woman had in mind that her husband might die and she's going to fall to the oven, of action be by, they shouldn't say kofin. We should ask. It's not right. It's not the oven's fault. She tried to ask herself on the oven. We can't compel him to do that. We can't force him. How come I ask? The Gemara answers for Shmuel. Shmuel would answer. Mishnah is talking about a woman. Not only is her husband didn't die yet, but he has children, right? She has children from the first husband. We don't suspect the children are going to die, and the husband's going to die. For sure, in that case, she didn't plan to ask her to the Yavam. So what do you want to say? If she has no children, then we would ask the husband, but we wouldn't to do chalitza, but we wouldn't compel him to. It says in the Mishnah, if we know she had intent in order to ask her the Yavam, right? Her husband's lying on his deathbed, and then she knows he's going to marry. She's going to be married to the Yavam, so therefore we see that you can't force him to do chalitza. According to Shmuel, we should say the case is a better case where she has children. The deceased husband had children. If there's no children, we follow the halacha as like Rav, right? Not like Shmuel. Therefore, like Rav would say, the Yavam is not like the husband. We don't assume, unless we have reason to assume otherwise, that she intended to answer herself on the Yavam, and therefore when she falls to the Yavam, she's not Asr Ba'anah to the Yavam. Hadran Alach Beis Shammai, that is the end of Perek Beis Shammai. Let's move on to the 14th Perek Cheresh. Cheresh and also Bikachas. Most of this Mishnah, it's a really long Mishnah, has been mentioned. We've talked about it. We've pretty much quoted every segment of this Mishnah in the previous couple dapim, so it's pretty much a repetition. If you're listening to the past couple dapim, it's not so complicated. There's only a few basic ideas you have to remember. We'll point them out as we go along. Cheresh nasa bikachas. So let's say you have a cheresh, he's a deaf mute. He married a pikachas. Now he's allowed to marry a pikachas, a fully competent woman, mentally competent woman. It's only a marriage d'Rabbanan. For a cheresh and a chareshes, there is a marriage d'Rabbanan. So Pikeach Shnaz Chareshes, like the man is Pikeach and he married a Chareshes woman who only knows sign language. If he wants to, whether the husband's a Cheresh or Pikeach, he could divorce her, right? Pikeach can divorce her. Again, these marriages are only Rabbanan, so we'll see why he could divorce her. If he wants to stay married to her, he can stay married. Just like they established the Rabbanan, they communicate a marriage, right? The marriage could take effect. She can agree to the kedushin with the rabbanan by sign language. So too, when he divorces her, he can also divorce her with sign language, whether the husband's the cheresh or the wife is the cheresh. What about if a competent man married a competent woman, a mentally competent woman, in the middle of the marriage, he became a deaf mute. If he wants to motzi her, he's a pikeach. He can give a get. If he wants to, he can keep her. If she became a shota in the middle of marriage, lo yosi, then Chazal midarabana midaraisa he could divorce her because the koach of a pikeach is to give a gerushin daraisa. He give it bal korcha, he give it against her will. Midarabana we said he shouldn't give a get because a shota will be abused by other people. People take advantage of the shota and be together with her when she has no ability to say no. What if the man in the middle of the marriage, he can be a cheresh or shota, he can't be motzei olamis because he lost his power to give a gerushin, a get. He's a cheresh or a shota, they're not a bar gerushin, so he can't give a get there. Why the woman can be divorced, but the man can't divorce? A woman can be divorced whether she wants to or even if she doesn't want to, even against her will. You need his ratzon, and until he's not a mentally competent person, we have no idea that he wants to actually divorce his wife. Part of the divorce, you have to say, "Areza gita," you have to say it. We don't know if he's cheresh or a shota. We don't know that he really wants to divorce his wife. Hey, Rabbi Yochanan ben Gugada, al charesha shesia avia. There was a woman, she was a ketana and a charesh, deaf mute, that her father married her off. Now, a father to marry his young daughter off, midaraisa, but because she's a charesha, it's only the rabbanan. She owes a beget. She can be removed from the marriage through a get. That's exactly what we're saying over here. As long as she's married to a pikeah, a fully mentally competent man, even though the marriage is only the rabbanan, he can be motzi her because he's fully competent. Two brothers who are deaf mutes. They're married to two sisters who are deaf mutes. Or two sisters who are fully mentally competent. One is a charesh, one is pikachas. Or the women are charashos. Two brothers are mentally competent. Or all four of them are deaf mutes. Or one brother is cheresh, one's begeach. This is a regular case of achos hishto falling to yibum, and there's an erva d'oraisa. Now we're changing the case. The two wives were not sisters; they were strangers to each other. They weren't sisters. Yichnosu. Then when they fall to yibum, in any of these cases, the person could do yibum. If they want to be motzi, they can be motzi. Because these only marriages are rabbanan, so therefore they can be motzi. Let's say you have two brothers, one the cheresh, one the bikeach. They're married to two smart sisters, two mentally dominant sisters. Meis cheresh bal pikachas. So now what do you do? If the cheresh, who's the husband of the bikachas, dies, now the bikachas falls to yibum. Mayasa bikeach bal pikachas. Now she falls to a bikeach. Teisi mishumachas isha, right? It's a fully fledged erva d'oraisa. Your wife's sister, so the no chalitza are even needed. But what about the other case? Let's say the mentally competent wife who was married to the mentally competent woman died. Now he falls to a cheresh who's married to a pikachas. Now a cheresh married to pikachas, since the cheresh is a cheresh, is only nisun derabanan. So therefore, he's not really married to her on the raisa level. Moti isha beget, so he's stuck. He has to give a get to his wife, which is only derabanan. There's nothing he can do. Even though technically on the derabanan level, she's achas ishto, on the raisa level, he was never married to her, so he's not married to achas ishto. So therefor, midrabanan, she's usher to him forever because achas ishto, as long as his wife is still alive, you're usher to the sister midrabanan. Shnei achin pikchin. Let's say the two brothers were smart. There's two in the shnei achayos. They married two sisters. Achas chareshes, achas bikachas. One's a chareshes, one's bikachas. Meis bikeach bal chareshes. If the smart husband died, mayaseh bikeach bal bikachas. It's a regular case of erva d'oraisa. Achas ishto is released from yibum chalitza. Meis bikeach bal bikachas. Mayaseh bikeach bal chareshes. Now the bikeach is married to the chareshes, which again is only a marriage derabanan. Motzi ishto beget. He has to get rid of his wife because he only has derabanan, and therefore the erva is ramya kameh. It's not. There's no tour of erva because midoraisa she's not achos ishto. From midrabanan she is. So he has to get rid of his wife with a gevet. Isha is acham bechalitza, but he could do chalitza to the Yevamos because technically, right, he's a pikeach. He can do chalitza, right? Only a cheresh or a chareshes we said they can't do chalitza. Shnei achin, echad cheresh ve'echad pikeach. Two brothers, one the cheresh, one the pikeach. Nesu l'shnei achayos. Now we're assuming the cheresh married the chareshes, the bikeach married the bikachas. Meis cheresh bal chareshes, mayas bikeach bal bikachas, teisei mishum achos isha. So they're two sisters, right? So the cheresh died, the bal chareshes falls to the bikeach. So that's the sister's wife's sister, even though she's deaf, but deaf mute, but she's wife's sister. So therefore, it's an erva d'oraisa. And she's potter menachlit on yibum. Meis bikeach bal bikach. Mayas cheresh bal chareshes. What does the cheresh bal chareshes do? Moses each of beget. He can get rid of his wife, right? It's the rabbanan of eish zachiv asur la'olam. There's no way of getting rid of the bikachas, right? Because there, he's a cheresh. A cheresh is incapable of doing chalitza, and he's incapable of giving. Well, there's no get because he can't be konis her. He's incapable of doing chalitza. She's asur la'olam because she's midrabanan. She's achos ishto. Shnei achin. Two brothers, one's a cheresh, one's a bikeach. Nesuin l'shnei nachrios. They're married here. They're strangers to the wives. They're not sisters. Pikchos. They're both pikchos. Meis cheresh bal pikachas. If the cheresh died, mayas bikeach bal pikachas. She falls in front of the bikeach. Ochol it's only yabim. Now she's the pikachas falling to a bikeach. So we can do chalitza yibum. Meis bikeach bal pikachas. Mayas cheresh bal pikachas. Kona is ve'eno mosi la'olam. Right. So here the bikachas is falling to the cheresh, who's married to a bikachas, so technically he could do yibum over here because there's no achos isha, they're not sisters over here. He could do yibum over here, but he can't be motzi her because he can't give her a get. A cheresh can't give a get. He can't do chalitza, but he could be motzi. I mean, the rabbanan, he could do the marriage, the yibum. They were masakin that for a cheresh, but he can't be motzi her. Shnei achin pichin, the student l'shnei nachrios. Let's say you have two brothers who are pichin, who are smart, and the student l'shnei nachrios. Achas bikachas v'achas chareshes. One's smart, one's not. Meis bikeach bal chareshes. If the bikeach who is married to the chareshes dies, mayas bikeach bal bikachas. Koneis im ratzah lahotzi yotzi. Right. So the chareshes falls to the bikeach. So they're not related. So he can do yibum to her, and if he wants to, he can divorce her. Meis bikeach bal bikachas. Mayas bikeach bal chareshes. Ochol, it's Yabim, right? They're not related. You do Chalitza or Yibum. Shnei Achin, Echad Cheresh, Echad Pikeach, two brothers, one the Cheresh and Pikeach, Nesul Shnei Nachri, Achas Cheresh, Achas Pikachas. Right, the Cheresh married the Cheresh, Pikeach married the Pikachas. My space Cheresh Bal Cheresh, Mayasa Pikeach Bal Pikachas. Kones, right? He's the Pikeach. He can do Yibum. Rata Lahotzi Yotze, he wants to divorce, he can divorce her because he has the Koach, he's the Pikeach. He can give a get. Meis Pikeach Bal Pikachas, right? Mayasa Cheresh Bal Cheresh, Kones and Mosi Leolam. He can do, they're masaking Yibum for him, it's like they're masaking is suing for him, so he can do Yibum, but he can't give her a get, and he can't do Chalitza, so that's the problem. We see in our Mishnah that both for a Cheresh, both for a man who's a Cheresh, and for a woman who's a Chereshes, they're masaking is suing. Maisha the Shota, the Lotakin Rabbanan, both for a male crazy man, a woman crazy woman, right? They're mentally, they have mental problems. They're insane, according to the article, or they have psychiatric problems. There's no nisuin for them. The Sanya showed the Kata Shidasu Nashu Mason. They're saying if a Shota or a male Kata, a Katana there is marriage, but a male Kata there's no marriage. If he marries a woman, they married, Umesu, and they died. And they have brothers, there's no Chalitza Yibam because their marriage was completely ineffective, even on the Rabbanan level. Cheresh Charesh is the Kaim of the Kant the Rabbanan, the Kino Rabbanan Nisuin. A Cheresh and Chereshes can technically be married, they can live together. They communicate in sign language. So therefore they're masaking both for the Cheresh and the Chereshes Nisuin. Shota, the low Kaima, the Kant the Rabbanan, the Inadam Nachar Kfifa Akas, you can't live with a snake in a small house. Because you get into fights, and show two people who have psychiatric problems will just get into a fight with each other. The Rabban never instituted Nisuin at all, even the Rabban. A Katan married to a Gdola, it's not even valid at all, even on the Rabban level. Cherish, a Cherish, a male Cherish, they did make Nisuin for him. Cherish will ask to call Nisuin. Cherish will never come to Nisuin, it'll always be a Cherish, Takin Rabban Nisuin, therefore they had to make a Takin Nisuin. Katan, the Atz call Nisuin. When he goes a little older, he can get married. Lo takinu rabbanan nisuin. They say just wait till you're older and then get married. Very Tana, the asli calling nisuin, takinu rabbanan nisuin. Tana, right? We've been talking about this parak and last parak. She can get married. Right? The asli calling nisuin. She's going to get older. She'll become eligible for marriage. Takinu rabbanan nisuin. They're running masakin nisuin. I want to say this means they're masakin kedushin nisuin. She got the raisa, right? Hasim shal yinigu a hefker. There, the reason is that Tana, her father died, she has no one to protect her, so her mother and brother marry her off to her husband is going to protect her, so people shouldn't treat her as hefker and make her into a prostitute. They're masakin miyun. Miyun is a way of a Tana can get out of her marriage. A chareshes, which is also a marriage to Rabbanan, she can't do miyun. Why can't she do miyun? So where it says the imkain, the top of Kuf Yud Gimel and Aleph, mimni v'lo naspila. When it comes to a Ktana, a man can reasonably marry a Ktana because she'll get older, she'll be fully mentally competent. So even though there's a chance she'll miyah and she'll refuse it, but he can, he'll try to placate her until that time. But a Charesh is always going to be a Charesh, she's always going to have the Pgam, she'll never become mentally competent. So therefore, no one's going to want to marry a Chareshes if they have the ability to do miyah. So therefore, the Rabbanan didn't give the ability to Charesh to do miyah. That will be the conclusion of today's shir. Stay tuned for Yonah Ben Sion. We're going to talk more about how long can people be in a relationship without being together. You're not going to want to miss it. See you there.